Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Hertz Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap video for Wednesday, the 10th. So a lot of themes to kind of go over today. So I will try to speak quickly about that. We'll go over definitely some themes of the day. You can see the VIX was down today. Market had some nice performance, although nothing was really deep in the green or red for the day. Small caps really didn't do much today. We'll talk about the breadth in just a second. The Qs were up about 70 basis points, a little bit off the highs there, a little bit of selling at the end of the day, and the S&P was up 0.5%. But that's not bad considering that we opened up essentially flat. So you got a nice little trading day in here. It's not like we opened up 0.5% and then really did nothing. We actually had some nice movement throughout the trading session. So that's pretty good. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through in this video is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. So I want to talk about breadth for a second. And then of course we'll talk about several other themes that played out for the day. But yes, the breadth has not been good so far this year. We're just basically a week and a half into the new year. But yeah, so what does that mean? Well, there's been more things that have been basically going down every day than going up. And of course, that's with volume too that I look at that. But for example, you can kind of see how this played out for the day. There's a decent amount, and there's been a decent amount of things that have been going down versus going up. For example, the banks have not been doing great. They've been doing okay. They just recently, but I've seen them more on the bottom of the list recently. The energy stocks have not been doing good. The clean energy stocks have not been doing well. Solar's not been doing well. And again, I'm just summarizing. Metals and mining have not been doing well. They've been on the bottom of the list for the last couple of days as well. Now, if you're not in any of those names, you're probably like, well, I don't care. And sometimes, like, if you're just trafficking in, the mega cap growth names, the Magnificent 7 or 8, whatever you call them, then you may not be complaining. If you've been in cyber names, and software names, and what else? Some semi names as well. Then you're probably not really you're not complaining about the breadth. But those are the areas that are working well. Some people who like to play, for example, the small caps have been maybe complaining about the breadth, right? But if you're not really looking at the small caps, then you don't care. Overall, we do want to see more things go up versus go down. And I guess it depends how you look at it, because I believe we are still seeing more new 52-week highs than 52-week lows. So that's good. So the breadth isn't all bad, but just on a given day, like you could see with our indicator, right, which is on the bottom left here, right, which looks at advancing versus declining along with volume. Right. And I think that was yesterday too. I think Helene Meisler tweeted out that it was a 70% downside day in terms of looking at the down volume for the day. So that gives you kind of a sense. So it has not been like a everything go up market. But what's nice about this is it's a trader's market, or as they say, it's a stock picker's market. I mean, there are some areas that are moving up. What sometimes concerns me when you have breadth like it is that sometimes you will begin to see more names that as they begin to break out, they get rejected, right? That's typical of a poor market breadth environment. However, like I said, and we're going to go through some stocks here in just a minute, but there are plenty of names that are doing pretty well in this environment. So before I get into the nitty gritty of some of the individual names, and I'm going to go through this too, I just want to bring up our Substack page. This is something new that we're doing at Tribeca Trade Group, and if you want to be a free subscriber, you could just go to ttgtrading.substack.com. It's right here listed. I know it's in small print, but I'll bring up what this looks like. This is our midday report. So we can kind of talk about a couple of these things for the day. So what I wanted to talk about first is, considering we're talking about the breadth, and this is 4-week new lows versus new highs. And this kind of sums it up too in just a different format, right? We're continuing to see healthcare outperform, and there's multiple different areas of healthcare that have looked good this year. So that has been a change. And I know that there's this JP Morgan conference that's going on, and that's a catalyst for the group. But I'll tell you, there's an awful lot of participation that's been going on. And that's something that we caught like right in the beginning of the year, because I went long XLV very early on in the move, and that's been working out quite nicely for us. And then what I've been doing is kind of looking at some individual names too. I also went along the medical device ETF yesterday. I got a little bit lucky with that because ISRG came out and had and reported, I think there were preliminary numbers after the close yesterday. But yeah, so you still have more names in the short term, right? This is 4-week new highs, right? This is not 52-week highs, but you still have more names progressing here. So that's good, right? And like even the consumer discretionary and staples, even though there's more staples that are making 4-week new highs, like you got Walmart in here, it's still a bigger percentage in here. So this is what we send out on a daily basis, although I won't be in on Friday, so there won't be a note on Friday. But I give this kind of a snapshot so that you could kind of see what's going on here. Of course, the spreadsheet that I just was looking at, you get that as well. We might as well talk about the CPI report tomorrow. What I did was just compile. I thought it was interesting because sometimes people are like, oh, I don't care about the CPI report. Okay, that's fine. Maybe you're a long-term investor, or maybe you're not trading at all. But if you're an active trader, you absolutely do care about the CPI report. Why do you care about it? Well, just look at what happened last year. Out of the 12 reports, right? Now, of course, there was some outliers in there. March, it went up 1.7. The S&P went up 1.7%. In November, it went up 1.4%. You had a couple in June and July that we almost went up 1%. Now, and you had a couple ones where we actually went negative for the day. October, you went negative for the day, right? But overall, if you add up all these CPI returns, even with the negatives, you get plus 5.6% for those 12 days, right? Considering that there's 252 trading days in a year, that's pretty darn good for 12 days. And yes, it can be. Now, not every month was impactful, right? There's a couple in there plus 0.1%, but on average, the CPI report can really move the market, hence the returns, and hence that makes up about 20% of what the returns in the overall index were last year just on those 12 days. All right, so this is what they're expecting for tomorrow, which I think is also in here, right? CPI report, they're looking for a 0.2. That's a beatable number. I think it has a chance. I mean, I'm not an inflation expert, but I think that we can come in maybe 0.1 or 0, but who knows? There's a lot of different components in that CPI report, and the timeliness, there could be one number that could throw it off. So in any event, we'll move on. It's just nice to know that it's impactful. We also have another bond auction tomorrow, which is the 30-year bond auction, right? I go over if you're paid for this, and it doesn't cost much for a monthly membership. We keep it cheap for you guys. We talked about the 1-hour chart and the S&P because there's a VPOC that was coming up. So far we kind of we're hanging above it, right? You always have to be careful once we get to one of these red lines, because it does represent overhead supply, right? And that means that you could see some more selling pressure. Then there's buyers present. And sometimes we kind of get knocked around here a little bit, but for now we're holding above it. It doesn't mean that we can't kind of come back and revisit it. That's sometimes what we see. Looking at, just to kind of go over the index charts with you really quickly. Yeah, the SPY is going to come up upon resistance. Remember, this month we basically started the month inside the value area. Qs as well. When you look at this chart, this has been recovering quite nicely. This kind of, along with IWM, went straight down in the first few days. I don't want to say straight down, that's being dramatic, but they sold off in the beginning of the year, right? So this is a nice comeback, right? And price for now is above both of those short-term moving averages. There was a question today about there was quite a bit of XLK put activity, which is different. We don't normally see this. So I'm just going to go over a little bit of option flow with you. So number one, this is some sizable trades, right? So puts, they're betting most likely on the downside. But with it, like with any option flow, we don't know what they're holding on, we don't know what the portfolio is that they're holding. They could, options are used for both speculation and for hedging. You don't know what if they're hedging here or they're speculating, right? So you know, I kind of think it's interesting. I can come up with my own theory. Everybody can come up with their own theory. There's plenty of events that you could speculate why somebody is putting on a big technology trade, right, to the downside. You know, it could be that they're worried about earnings. Could be that they're worried about the March FOMC. You don't know. So, you know, keep in mind what is in the XLK ETF. Well, about 45% of that ETF is Apple and Microsoft. Now, both of these, like, and I want to talk about Microsoft because I went long Microsoft, and I'm not selling Microsoft. I have a trailing stop. You know, I have a stop on it, right? This broke out of its value area, which is nice. It did not hesitate on this, you know, on this the point of control from the last period, and it's challenging the highs here. Now, it still has some work to do. If we look at this weekly chart, right, it's got to close above 381.69 by the end of the week. But I tell you, this is really nice, and it's done a good job of just kind of digesting this big move after earnings, right? This is exactly what you want to see sometimes in an uptrend, just a lot of digestion after there's a big move, and then ultimately resolving higher. Notice how it let the 50-day moving average catch up. So I'm long this. Right, I got long right in the beginning of the day. Again, I don't like to put on big positions, swing trade positions at the beginning of the day. So for now, I'm in at 379, and I'm up a little bit in the trade. NVIDIA was quiet for the day. Talk about this. We'll go around, and you know, it was up again. But I shouldn't say. I'm sorry. I shouldn't say quiet. It was up 2.3%, which I'm very happy about. But notice what it did here. Oh, it looks like it came alive here at the end of the day. But it was just all from about 10 o'clock on. It just kind of straddled that top of the value area for the session. Right, here's the value area, and I noticed, you know, he said, watch. I said, you know, if you want to, if you're long with me, you could take a target at 543. I did that yesterday as it started to pull back a little bit, so I didn't do any trading in NVIDIA today. I'm just, you know, letting it do its thing for now. What else did I want to go over? The watch lists for just to kind of show you the strength that you had there in what I refer to as the Great Eight. Rather than the Magnificent Seven, but Meta was super strong too, right? This is breaking out. We talked a little bit about this in the trading room at the end of the day, and really nice breakout of value area. I think this is headed towards that 377 virgin point of control. That's I think that's the last one, right? That's from all the way from the previous highs. That's my guess, and then we'll have to see what it does there. Right, here's another example of what can happen on a virgin point of control. Right, we hit this and it was kind of the touch of death, and I think that was or the kiss of death, I should say, for a little bit. Now again, this gave you an opportunity to kind of buy it back in here. VPOC takeout, bounce. VPOC takeout here, bounce. So, you know, this could be a place to take a target. Notice that we're coming upon earnings too. This is going to report earnings on the first of the month. So maybe it continues to rally into the first of the month. All right, so that was a star performer for the day, right? And then we could, you know, next we could go into, you know, the cyber names. Palo Alto was a name that I featured. Speaking of the Substack yesterday, look at this thing up 5% today. If you were patient with this, right, all this pullback just in a couple days, it takes back like a couple weeks of that pullback. CrowdStrike, which I am, and I'm long Palo Alto in the TTG trend portfolio, but what a mover in this CrowdStrike. This is the one name I mentioned in yesterday's video that I added to it last week. Really, really nice mover. VRNS is another one in this space, along with Zscaler. And we actually did see some call buying. Speaking of call buying, so I'll show you some puts, right? And then I show you some calls here because we don't normally see option activity in Hack, right, which is the one of the cyber ETFs. Usually I watch CIBR, but this was pretty interesting, and I think this totaled, if I can get it for you. One second, let me just update my screen. Yeah, there's about 3,000. They bought what looks to be both the 63 and the 61 calls. I don't know if they did a spread. It wasn't marked that way, but you know, the cyber ETF, all those names that we mentioned are the top holdings, right? And here's what Hack looks like, right? You got to break out of the January valuary. So nice, you can go long this versus 60.46. Again, it did take out a VPOC up here, right? Look at the volume this week in the hack ETF, right? Of course, right? Because they've all been super strong. A few other names that I wanted to go through. What was interesting too, and I have this up here as one of the something new on the leaderboard, which is the transports, right? And it's kind of funny because transports, sometimes you think, oh, it's the rails, it's the trucking names, but Uber's now in this thing, and that was something that I went long today. Here's my Uber trade, 20 minutes into the day. Just kind of stalked this yesterday. If you watched yesterday's video, the two names that I mentioned at the end of the video were Dash and Uber, and this worked pretty well. It took a little bit, you know, and it had a kind of a deep pullback here, but real nice move into the value area, and I did take a couple targets. 62.31 is what I'm looking for to take another target. That's going to line up similarly with well, look at that, it actually took out this VPOC up here. So I thought it was a little bit higher, but again, some overhead resistance that it's going to have to get through overhead supply. But I like Uber, and you know, we'll see if it can get through that 63.21 if it gets there. Again, my plan is to take another target, but not take the whole thing off. A few other names. We'll talk about a little bit about healthcare, but I like this name, right? This is Ferrari, right? This Ferrari had a nice, you know, also pullback, maybe shook people out a little bit, went below the value area for the month, and now back above all these short-term moving averages, including its 50-day moving average. So I like Ferrari, and you got a nice little dip here, and it is now the bullish 80% rule. If you're not familiar with what the bullish 80% rule or bearish is, bullish means when you start a period below value, you break into the value area, there's an 80% chance that you can go from one side to the other in that period. All right, that's race. And then a couple pharma names. I mean, these names have been so strong, right? Here's what XLV did today. Slower, but moving in the right direction. AbbVie had a nice day. That's continuing to move higher. Right? It's a name that we talked about last week, right? Just continuing to break a little bit of digestion. Nice move, right? I actually like this Regeneron too. Because it kind of pushed back here to the top of value. So you're not buying it on the highs, but yes, this is a very strong chart, breakout, retest top of value of January, and moving into the value area for the week. Another one I haven't talked about it in a long time, but just caught my radar because it hit the leader scan today, and this is Shockwave Medical, right? This has been it was a darling a few years ago, right? And then it really kind of had some issues. So again, this is not the best looking chart. It's just too all over the place, but I think it can run further, you know, in the short term for another day, maybe. There's a VPOC up here at 227. That's what I would target, and that's how I would look at this name in the short term. All right, let me see if there's anything else that I wanted to mention that I covered earlier in Microsoft. So if you notice, and if you're subscribing to the Substack, I will put in the trades that I got long for the day, and I will give you the reasoning. So, you know, Microsoft and Uber were two new trades right in the first, you know, half hour of the day. And then what I will do is I will follow up with just a little bit of what I'm looking at in those names. Notice I had Regeneron in there as well. All right, so so that is it. Pretty amazing how our watch list is doing this week. Again, I don't take every one of these trades, but it's a starting point for the week. You know, Datadog is another name that I've been watching too, but we talked about Meta. I talked about this RXRX. Sure enough, by the way, another good example of a VPOC, which I talked about in yesterday's video, right? Here's this 1 hour VPOC, perfect kiss of the overhead supply and a bit of a rejection there. But again, you know, this was a huge move, and I discussed that in yesterday's video. What else? VRNS, which I talked about, NVDA, of course. Snowflake has been a nice play. ANF, I didn't even get a chance to look at this chart today, and this will be the last one that we talk about, but not bad. You know, had a move down today. These dips get bought in this name. All right, so very nice. I'm still long some gap. Didn't do much. I don't think it did much today. All right, it's still inside that value area. I would like to see it get back above 21.45. All right, guys, that is it for tonight. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.